Welcome back, everyone. Here we are. We're going to do the review of issue 95. It's been a while, but it's time to do a review again. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to examine is the Naboo J-type star skiff. In the later days of the Old Republic, the design ethos of Naboo's Theed Palace space vessel engineering corps was well known, and the shining chromium skin that adorned all the Royal Naboo ships was recognized across the galaxy. Furthermore, the popularity of the planet's spirited young senator Amidala meant the news channels and gossip columns regularly retold the story of the former queen being granted the use of the striking ships, which were normally reserved for the reigning monarch, as a gesture of thanks and respect for her service to her people. This continued service meant that the traditionally quiet and largely unassuming world of Naboo, along with Amidala's modified J-type star skiff, remained in the public eye as the senator went about her diplomatic duties during the Clone Wars. New era, new treats. The main hull of the skiff had the same water droplet shape of the traditional Naboo craft, and its wide, graceful wings were another echo of the past. However, this was a ship built for a new, less peaceful era. This was manifested in several key design features. First, with its assigned role of carrying the often targeted Senator Amidala in mind, the skiff was anticipated to be escorted at most, if not all, times by N1 starfighters, so there were refueling ports for them to slot into. Then there were the wings, which were not fully covered in decorative chromium, but included gaps atop and bottom for heat exchange grills. Other parts of the ship were seen to embody a more practical wartime mentality, with the use of hugely powerful sublight engines and a heavily reinforced hull, plus considerably stronger shielding compared to that found on previous models. The diplomatic ship had a powerful sensor jamming system to scramble guided missiles and scanners that would be specifically kept watch that would specifically keep watch for enemy starfighters. Most controversial of all, however, was the inclusion of two laser cannon turrets mounted on the top surfaces of the wings. This was the greatest departure from the ethos of the pacifist Naboo people, and though speedy escape was always the first option for the royal vessel's pilot, hence the powerful engines, they were now accompanied by a trained gunner, ready to deter any pursuers or attackers with a barrage of laser blasts. Diplomacy first. While Padme often used the smaller Royal Naboo H-type Nubian yacht for personal missions, the skiff was more useful as a diplomatic vessel. While it had small personal cabins, its primary passenger space was relatively large, with an open area with 6 acceleration chairs, complete with safety bars for use during takeoff and landing. There were other chairs toward the front of the ship that allowed some comfort while accessing communications and information consoles. This main room was accessed from one of two doors at the top of the main landing ramp. The control cabin, meanwhile, was above and to the rear. The pilot, co-pilot, and gunner had to pass through the main passenger area, go through a side door at the front end, and then double back down a narrow corridor to reach the access ladder. Amidala heads for Mustafar. It was in the Royal J-type starskiff that a pregnant Padme Amidala embarked on her last fateful voyage when she raced to Mustafar in pursuit of her husband Anakin, who had become the Sith apprentice Darth Vader. The Clone Wars were in their final hours. Order 66 had been given, the Jedi Purge had begun, and amidst the chaos, Obi-Wan Kenobi sneaked aboard the skiff to travel with Padme to confront his former apprentice. This, though, was to prove disastrous when Anakin, enraged by the sight of his former master and believing himself to have been betrayed, gave in to his anger and force-choked Padme into unconsciousness. After an unsuccessful attempt to save her on Polis Massa, the final sorrowful journey of the star skiff was to Naboo, where Padme Amidala was buried. YB-49 prototype. This are behind the scenes details. Quite the glare, sorry. On its first appearance in Revenge of the Sith, many liken Padme's Naboo starskiff to the United States Air Force Cold War era prototype bomber, the Northrop YB-49. The strategic bomber was built shortly after World War II, and while it never went into active service for the U.S. Air Force, the craft, which was constructed around a distinctive flying wing design, is remembered for its appearance in the 1953 film of the War of the Worlds, in which the YB-49, through archival footage, was used as the plane that drops the nuclear bomb on the invading Martians. So that would be the prototype. I'm sure you guys have all seen that before, and that's what the stealth bomber, B-1 stealth bomber, was derived from. All right, let's go visit Dakar, the Resistance base. Dakar is in the Ilium system, is a green and verdant world. The planet's main terrain is made up of almost uninterrupted forests and jungles, broken up only by small bodies of water and rocky island mesas. A thick, stable asteroid belt casts heavy shadows across the equilateral region, equatorial region. Though no sentient life evolved on Dakar, innumerable avian and forest-dwelling species thrive on the insect life that swarms the planet. At night, over the incessant thrum of those insects, the cries of the predators that haunt the forests keep everyone visiting the world close to their camps or spacecraft. Dakar's path to its moment in galactic history is a long one. Back during the Galactic Civil War, not long after the Battle of Hoth, the Rebel Alliance had picked up rumors of a new Imperial project of unprecedented scale. Following up on several leads, 2 Rebel pilots ran a scan of the Ilium system. They found nothing, though tagged the conveniently located, though largely ignored planet of Dakar as a possible location for a base and established a small outpost there. Soon after, however, the Battle of Endor began, the sudden decline of the Empire, and, following the rise of the New Republic and the drop in Alliance activity, Dakar and its outposts were all but forgotten. More than 3 decades later, Leia Organa found her political career at an end after revelations of her bloodline were announced in the New Republic Senate on Hosnian Prime. Nonetheless, she had noted the rise of a new threat emanating from the unknown regions, and knew that war was inevitable. In the face of uninterested New Republic, Leia took it upon herself to organize a unit to oppose the new power, bringing together a few supporters to establish the resistance. They first met in a small hangar outside the capital city of Hosnian Prime, but larger facilities were soon needed. A search through old Alliance surveys threw up Dakar. It was investigated and declared suitable. So, talking about the bloodline here, this is specifically from a book called Bloodline, and it's all about Leia and how uh, basically the information or the details of Anakin being her father, or in everybody else's eyes, it was Darth Vader being her father. Basically, she was going for Supreme Chancellor, and because of that information, you know how politics work. Because of that information, she was basically ousted. And then the rest of this information talking about, um, you know, established the resistance and they met outside a hangar. That is in the Aftermath book series. So if you're interested in reading any of the books, those two would definitely point to that information. The resistance installation on Dakar would always draw comparison with the former Rebel Alliance base on the jungle planet of Yavin 4. And while this brought a rueful smile to the faces of those few older Alliance members in the Resistance, the techs who carved the new hideout from the living jungle and rock of Dakar would have loved to have the advantage of an ancient temple system as a foundation that the rebel counterparts had enjoyed. Let's go up here and then we'll finish there. Dakar was largely ignored by much of the galactic population, as much because of its neighbors as anything else. The worlds of Naboo, Sullust, and Malastare offered far easier options than the jungles found on Dakar, both for colonists and those looking for commerce and industry. And while criminals seeking a bolt hole might have found Dakar a happy home, with fringe worlds like it having a long tradition of providing a safe haven for smugglers, the short distance to Tatooine meant Dakar was saved from the ignominy too. Uh, there had been attempts made to colonize the planet, though, and the presence of various ruins were tantamount, were testament to that. Still, for a variety of reasons, stifling humidity, stubbornly invasive plant life, clouds of insects, no colonists stayed long, and Dakar was uninhabited and all but forgotten when the Resistance established its base on the world. Indeed, like the Rebel Alliance's previous secret bases on Yavin 4 and Hoth, Dakar's isolation was one of the main reasons the world was chosen. There you go. Working quickly to expand the existing outpost, those techs dug down to create a relatively small main base. When compared to the likes of Echo Base, which was quickly covered over, vegetation soon began to take root, and it was welcome as it covered many of the main structures. Above ground, a few hyperwave transceiver dishes, the sensor towers, the jamming arrays, and the Malso starfighter duty hangars were all that could be seen. These were linked by a Duracrete airstrip that allowed personal and small vehicles to move quickly above ground inside the structure itself. A repair area was built beneath the hangars where starfighters, small transport craft, and repulsor lift vehicles could be maintained. At the same level were the accommodation and storage areas. The upper levels had the upper levels held the small command center and med center. The nearby mountains hid observation posts, and to remain secret, the base retained as small a footprint as possible. The surrounding terrain and climate inevitably likened Dakar's base to that of Yavin, the biggest design and operational influence from the days of rebellion against the Empire was the fate of the Hoth base. From the outset, General Organa insisted that every piece of equipment be kept in a state whereby it could be stripped out, packed up, and shipped off as quickly and efficiently as possible in the event of an evacuation. Old ties. Many key figures in the resistance came from the Rebel Alliance, most notably General Organa and Admiral Akbar. Akbar had also fought in the Clone Wars when he battled for the fate of his own world of Mon Cala alongside then Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, Leia Organa's father, and the man who would become Darth Vader. By the time the threat of the First Order was realized, Akbar had been retired for some years, but immediately answered General Organa's call, happy and proud to stand by her again against a threat that was at once new and hauntingly familiar. Our behind the scenes here, the Green Hand Common. The filming location of the resistance base on Dakar was a real, though disused, airbase the Royal Air Force's Greenham Common Airfield in Berkshire, England. Built during World War II, the airbase served both the RAF and the United States Air Force, and might have been permanently decommissioned were it not for the escalations of the Cold War, which saw the base kept in service in the 1950s, when it became one of the U.S. Air Force's principal strategic air command bases. Later, Greenham would play a controversial role in the nuclear arms race when, in the 1980s, the base was used to hold American nuclear cruise missiles, sparking numerous anti-war protests at the site. Well, there you go. That is everything. We only had 2 stories because there was so much to do in this issue. So we got all that done. Next time, looks like we're going to get, I'm assuming, more of the, we're going to get more of the landing leg stuff, as well as we're going to get some of the parts for detailing this back section, the engine section of the Falcon. So that will be in issue 96. Engine cover details and landing leg. It even tells you right there. So there we go. That should be everything. I want to thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you always.